So I'll go through the sample numericals that have been uploaded in the on the Google Classroom. So this was the question that was uploaded. So as you can see, uh, this has the x variable, which is the independent variable, and y is the dependent variable. And we want to learn a regression fit model with the hypothesis hx is equal to a plus bx to fit this data. So one may notice that this is a simple data set, that the dimension of x, the feature space of the x is the one dimensional only. But in real cases, like there might be like n dimensional data set. And here the dimension of target variable y is also one. In real world cases, usually the target attribute in the regression task is one, but in some rare cases, it can be more than one also. Now coming to the solution directly. So this was the normal equation that you guys have studied. Now this is the hypothesis hx is equal to a plus bx that we want to learn. So as you can see, like in this theta, that is our parameter vector, theta is equal to x transpose into x transpose dot x inverse dot x transpose dot y cap. Y is the target attribute. In this case, is it vector y 216, as you can see. Now, what is the x here? So like x that is being used in normal equation is having the has the dimension of m comma n plus 1. So m is here the number of samples. So here the number of samples are 9, and the n plus 1 is the number of this x has the dimension of m comma n plus 1. M is the number of rows, n plus 1 are the columns, and n is the number feature space of the x, dimension of the feature of the x. 1 is added in this because of the bias. Now you might have been aware of this, for a regression task, one may calculate this simple theta parameter by putting values in this normal equation. So we know the x will become this, because we have added the bias column, and this is the another column, the feature column that we have been provided. Now so if we can see, like, this is our x, and this is our target attribute, target variable y, and we just calculate this normal equation. As we can see, like, first we have calculated the transpose of x, then we have calculated the x transpose dot x using this x transpose dot x. Now we can calculate the x transpose x inverse using this. Now we can we have this we are denoting this x transpose dot x inverse as temp1 variable. Now we can have the temp2 variable, which is like x transpose, this x transpose here, dot target variable y, target vector y. So and we are denoting it as temp2, and our parameter theta, which is in this case a comma b only, is theta is equal to this temp1 dot temp2, as you can see. And we can have this is the theta parameter value, and this is here a corresponding to the bias column, and this is b corresponding to the x parameter. If here the dimension space of the x was only one dimensional, but in real case or in any other problem, if it is more than one dimension, then you can have here accordingly you can have other like theta naught, theta 1, theta 2, etc. Process is the same. Now coming to the residuals. So in regression task, we want to, so the definition of residuals, if we see, like suppose we have this uh, xi again is a suppose one dimensional, and here on the y-axis we have the like target attribute, target variable. Now we have these data points denoted by blue dots, and we fit a regression line denoted by this line, blue line. Then the residuals are defined as the uh, difference between the actual and predicted values of the target attribute, yi minus yi cap. So yi cap is nothing but the predicted value, and yi is the actual value. So actual value is denoted by this blue dot, and corresponding predicted value is denoted by this orange dot. Now if we see, and this difference is the residual. This kind of plots help in to see like how good is our regression plot is. But this is valid for only kind of one-dimensional or even two-dimensional data, two-dimensional feature space of the X. But if the feature space of the X is multi-dimensional, then this kind of curve you cannot plot on the 2D plane easily and cannot visualize. So residual plot in that sense help a lot. So what we do in the residual plot, we calculate these residuals, the difference between the actual and predicted values. Then we plot these residuals on the y-axis, vertical axis, y-axis, versus the predicted values of the target attribute. So in the residual plot, the most useful way to plot the residuals is like you have your predicted values on the x-axis and your residuals on the y-axis. So this is the one way to plot the residual plot. Now coming to the like how should your, in a good way, how should your residual plot look like? So suppose you have learned a hypothesis. So suppose in our question we have defined the hypothesis hx is equal to a plus bx, but we could have defined it in other way around also. After learning a hypothesis using linear regression fit, we see like how are the residuals or how my actual value are different from the predicted values. So we plot the residual plot and we see. So these are some of the examples of the valid residual plot that that a good fit should resemble. So these are randomly dispersed in the space, as you can see. But if your residual plots are of these kinds, as you can see, these are kind of skewed somewhere, or parabolic, or somewhere cornered. So these kind of residual plot indicate that the hypothesis that you have fitted on your model is not a good. So you should, in those kind of scenario, one should change their hypothesis hx, which is generally in the standard linear regression is a plus bx. So a is the bias, and x is bx, b is the parameter vector, and x is your feature, like x dimension that you have. So coming back to the problem. So in the first part of the question, we have defined hx as a plus bx, and we have find out from the normal equation are a and b values. We can predict, like we have defined, we have find out like what is our theta, parameter theta. Then we can find out the predicted values. We can calculate the residuals. Also, we can plot the residuals. If we see in the first case, the residual plot, this is a kind of a toy example, but still we can see like this is the kind of the variation in the data. As you can see, this is kind of following the parabolic curve kind of. So there is a kind of a pattern here. Now, if there is as you guys have studied, like what is R square, or coefficient of determination. So we can see in this case, if we calculate using these kind of equations that you already know from the lecture, that this is the R square estimation 0.877, and this is the mean square error. So I believe you guys know mean square error is nothing but the like 1 by n summation of yi minus y cap I square, like summation of residuals square divided by number of data points. So this was the first part of the question. Now coming to the second part. Now the question is asking to predict to fit a quadratic model. So quadratic model is nothing but gx is equal to a plus bx whole square. So we can so this is the thing, like we have a plus bx whole square kind of thing. So we cannot directly fit linear regression here. Hello. Hello.
Yes, Vikansh.
Yeah, if there is someone having doubt, they may ask right now. We will move forward then.
Any questions, anyone?
Yes, no. Okay, so okay, why MSC was too high? Yeah, MSC was too high. As you can see, these are my residuals that I am getting. As you can see, my residuals is as high as 15.6944. So if my MS like these kind of residuals I am having, like for particular data set, then MSC is high here. So it is not a good fit, very good fit. It still is quite so MSC is kind of a metric that that is not that depends on the number of data points also. So in real case, real world scenario, you see like number of data points are very large, or but here there are only 9. So you are divided by 9 only. So that's why also MSC is also high. And your residuals value are also very high. As you can see, 13.11, 15.69, etc. So any other question? Is that the case in every parabolic pattern? No. So like the key concept here is like you plot the yes, like outliers are, detection of outliers is a key technique in the regression task. But for this toy example, we want to learn the concept related to the residual plot, etc. Residual plot, coefficient of determination, and what are the kind of transformations we can use on a linear hypothesis to convert to more. Can we use other metric instead of MSC, like absolute mean error? Of course, one may use like different kind of metrics, different kind of data pre-processing before fitting a regression plot, but it depends totally on the task that you are dealing with. So it is not so those are the task dependent things, I guess. So maybe reducing, yeah. For model performance, can we also compute variance score? So variance score is kind of incorporated in your R square estimation, I guess. I don't know. I'll get back to you over that. So you may ask also, like on the Google Classroom, those kind of doubts if you have, and if any of us will be having some output on that or some thoughts on that, we will reply there. Okay, so let me go move forward. So is high R square always good for model? No, it depends again. Like high R square always. So I also don't believe in that. Like high R square is always good for a model, but it reflects the fit of the model. It certainly reflects the fit of the model. Like how good your model is fitted on the particular data set or your trained data on which you are fitting a hypothesis or regression. So now coming to back, particularly this question, if we see like gx is equal to a plus bx whole square. Now question is asking to fit this kind of hypothesis, but you cannot apply the linear regression directly here. So what one may do, we may kind of transform our space in which we can apply the linear regression easily. So we have this y as 216. It is I am denoting here as y given. So we can take the square root of it. So this is the square root of it, and this square root of it will become, then this is the y. After taking square root, these are the values, and this is the y we want to predict with our hypothesis a plus bx. So we have converted this problem using square root as a transformation into the linear regression, like those in which the space in which we can apply the linear regression easily. So after that, this is my y, new y, over which I will be learning my linear regression using normal equation, computing through the square root value. Then x is the same, that is the independent variable, and we have learned using the same kind of normal equation. This is my a and b value that you may see. Now again, this is the square root space of the actual target. In this square root space, I will again be calculating my residuals, which are nothing but the difference between the actual and predicted values, and we will be plotting them as a residual plot. Now you can see this is the kind of residual plot I am getting. Now this is a bit random, but still this is a toy example, and one may argue these are the kind of pattern one may see, so these are not still random. But yeah, for this problem, we can see it is a kind of random, we can assume it, or even it is random from previous case. Now in this square root space, if I calculate again the R square estimation, then it is coming 0.959. So previous it was 0.87, and MSC, as you guys have noticed, it was too high. Now MSC has been reduced this much, like 0.29 only. So but ultimately we need an output in the square space, because for our task we are y is those actual numbers. We have taken the square root of the actual target, but for final output we are again going to take the square of the predicted value. So y predicted, which was we learned in the square root space, we will square again it to convert it in the actual target space. Now again we can see now we have the y predicted square and the y given, which was the actual target. Now we can see residuals in this actual target space, and again we can see result R square estimation and the MSC. So MSC, R square estimation, as you can see in the square root space, it was 0.95 and MSC was 0.29. But in the actual target space that we again have converted, it is coming back to the 0.84, even reduced, and MSC is 32.7. So if we say one may ask so this was the third question that question is asking, calculate the coefficient of determination in both cases and tell which is a better fit. So this was the first case in which we learned the standard linear regression hypothesis a plus bx, and this was the second case in which we learned the square of a plus bx. Now if we compare both, so what are the comparison we can do? We can plot the residual plot and see if there is a random pattern, where is the random pattern, that will be good. We can calculate the R square estimation. We can calculate the mean square error. So those are kind of metrics that we can try to use, compare two regression fits. But it is not a fair comparison if we compare those kind of different linear and square hypothesis in different space. So it is in the linear hypothesis, these are the values in the actual target space, but here for this square hypothesis, this matrix value determination and mean square error are computed in the square root space of the actual target variables. So this is not a fair comparison. one should always compare in the actual space. First you transform, as we can first transform from actual target space to the square root space, then we should again transform to the actual target space before comparison. So is this clear? Okay, what is it? Shouldn't we first square the predictions and get the real values and then calculate MSE? Yeah, this is the thing I am. Yeah, this is the thing I am pointing out here. Yeah, the same thing I am pointing out here. That first you should retransform it again. So many tutorial you may see online that they compare in the transformed space, not the actual targeted space. So this is not a fair comparison, and this may lead to kind of a biased determination for your model or fit. You should always transform again back to the actual target space, then compare two models to fit. So as we can see, these are the two models in the actual target space only. So this is the linear model, and the linear model is giving 0.877, and MSE is this. And this is my square A plus B X hypothesis, but again in the actual target variable space. So these are the metrics 0.84. So square R square estimation has been reduced a little bit, but the MSC has decreased 1/3. So this is the toy example kind of thing to learn the concepts. But for this particular task, still I will prefer this square hypothesis, because my R square is kind of comparable, but MSC is about 1/3. So this was the all about. Now coming to the regression, another question was like population related. Populations are generally modeled as A into e raised to power bx, or A into b raised to power t. So here we can see A into exponential. We can transform it into a linear hypothesis by taking log both sides. So this, after taking log, this kind of hypothesis you may have. Now this is your this is lnp will be your target variable. lna is replaced by 1. So as you can see here, these are the new target variable, and this is your x as given. You may learn the hypothesis. Now what variable you will get? So this column will correspond to the lna. So it will not be the like a, it will be lna, because lna is here. So these are the simple, and you may go through this example. Now coming to the so I'll stop sharing this screen now. So let me. Okay, is there any kind of doubt? Then we may forward to the neural network. Hello. Hello, Muskan.
Yes, Vikansh. If there is no other doubt, I think we can move to the next topic.
Okay, so for the neural network part, I found a good online tutorial, so I'll be going through that only.
There are some more questions, Vikansh.
For reducing skewness, is there any other method except for log transform? So log transform we took to convert it into linear. So though that was the exponential hypothesis, and we converted into the linear one by taking log. So skewness, I didn't get how like skewness is related here. So is it always the case that transformation will decrease MSC? No, it is not always the case. Like those in the first question, we like we just thought like maybe quadratic hypothesis may work better, but this is not always the case. That's why neural networks are getting famous or become famous, because they learn the internal data, complex transformations by themselves only. You don't have worry about too much about hypothesis, etc. Up to which degree we have to try to reduce MSC. So it totally depends on the task in hand. Like I don't know about it. Okay, so should we move forward? So so this is the this is the kind of tutorial I found to learn back propagation in an easy manner. So if one may see, this is the kind of a network we have. So these I1, I2 are the input neurons, input layer. H1 is the single hidden neuron, H1, H2, and O1, O2 is the output. And these are the corresponding weight. And these B1, B2 are the bias. Now, these are the, initial weights we define, starting point of our, algorithm. We define some initial weights. So these are the initial weights that in this toy example have been defined. So, and these are the, this is the input that we are feeding, particular input, and this is our target. Target is 0.1, 0.99. Okay. And if we see, the first is the forward pass, so to compute the back probe, we first do the forward pass. So in the forward pass, we can calculate the this net H1 is nothing but so coming to here. So if we see a particular neuron, a neuron has like input. So these are calculated as W. So W5 into some input, W6 into input plus bias. So that is my net O1 will work as for this particular input, and this then we will apply some kind of activation function over that input to the neuron, and that will become my final output from the neuron. Okay, is this basic clear? Like we have some input that we multiply with weights, then we apply the activation functions, and that becomes the final output from my neuron. So if we see in this case, so like net H1, like input to my neuron is what? W1 into I1 plus W2 into I2 plus B1. Okay. Then we can, this is written, and we can calculate using the given values or the current step values, this net H1. In this toy example, the given values are the current step value only. Now, we the output of that neuron, H1 neuron, will be like the weighted inputs. We will apply some activation functions on the weighted inputs. Now this is NAT H1 is the weighted input to the neuron, and we are applying this sigmoid, logistic function. Sigmoid, sigmoid itself, I guess. As an activation, and we are seeing like this is the output 0.59. Okay, so it is clear. After that, similarly, with the same process, we can calculate the out H2. Out H2, which will be nothing but what? First, we will calculate the weighted input. Weighted input, what will be? W3 into I1 plus W4 into I2 plus B1. That will be my weighted input or NAT H2. Then we will apply the activation function over the NAT H2, and that will become my final output from the neuron H2. Okay, so in that way, they have calculated this output. They have calculated this out H2. Okay. Now we repeat this process for the output layer neurons using the output from the hidden layer neurons. Okay. In the forward pass, you start from the input side and go towards the output side. So first you have calculated the out of H1, H2. Now we will calculate the NAT O1, which is the weighted input on the output neuron 1. Okay, so again, as we can see from the network diagram, out O1 will be have NAT O1 as the H1 into W5 plus H2 into W6 plus this bias B2. This will become my NAT O1. Then we will similarly we can calculate the NAT O2, and then final output of neuron will be like activation function of the output neuron applied on the NAT O1. Okay, so activation function is again maybe it is again the logistic function or sigmoid, we can say. So this is the out O1, and similarly the same process for other output neuron O2, we can get the output final output of the neuron is 0.7. So these are the final output O1 from and O2, and these are my like our predicted values. But now to have the back propagation, we will like first we have to define some kind of error or the loss function for our network. So here in this case, they have defined the squared error. But in different networks, you may define different kind of loss functions also. Here in this example, we are taking squared error function. So squared error function is nothing. They have defined it is at this way, like summation of half target minus output whole square. Okay, so half is included here. Like if we take differentiate later on, then this 2 comes here in the multiplication and 2 cancels out. That's why they have defined, but it like it depends on you and the framework that you are using to implement loss function. So as we can see, like EO1 and EO2 will correspond to my total loss. And we can calculate EO1 and EO2. So like we had the target O1 as 0.01, as you can see here. So it was 0.01 and 0.99. Okay. And we just calculated in the forward pass our out O1 and out O2. Okay. Using this, we will calculate our total error, total loss function. Here you can see in this example, they have calculated this for the EO1 and EO2 similarly, and then they are adding it up. Now coming to the important thing, the backward pass.
Vikansh, you're not audible. I think he dropped out, should be joining.
Hello. So when did I logged out?
Yeah, we can hear you again, Vikansh. Please continue.
Okay, so my screen is visible.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Can you zoom it up a bit, Vikansh?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, thanks. Please continue.
So now we want to calculate the like how much of the our total error is dependent on particular weight W5. So in this back propagation, we use the basic calculus and we apply the chain rule. So if let me go. So here is my W5. So W5 is directly affecting on the EO1 only. As you can see, it is directly connected to the EO1. So it will be easy to calculate del E total with respect partial derivative of E total with respect to W5. So it will be like E total, uh, that output of the neuron, that out O1 is nothing but the sigmoid function in this case, multiplied by that out O1, uh, partial derivative of out O1 with respect to the input, to the weighted input to the uh, O1 neuron, that we denote here in this example by net O1 into net O1 divided by W5. So as we saw, and this is the kind of uh, you know the way of looking it in the diagram manner. So to calculate it, we need uh, each of these values. Uh, we need first the derivative of E total with respect to the out O1. So derivative of E total we can calculate with respect to the out O1 using this equation. So as you can see, we have this total error, and this is the partial derivative we have taken with respect to the out O1, and this is simpler, like we have taken this target, like this second term will be with respect, we are taking partial derivative with respect to out O1, that second term will be like constant, then it will be zero out. This 2 will come here, 2 by 2 will cancel out. This derivative of x raised to power n is, as we know, n into x raised to power n minus 1. Then we are applying that formula, we are getting this. Now similarly, here we will put those values and we will have this. partial derivative of E total with respect to out O1. So this is the one thing that we have calculated to compute del E total with respect to E total with respect to W5. Derivative of E total with respect to O1. Now again, another thing we can calculate it, the del out O1 with respect to del of net O1. Okay, the output of the neuron is nothing but this sigmoid function applied on the weighted input. And it is good to know that if we denote sigmoid function as sigma, then the derivative of sigmoid function is sigma into 1 minus sigma. You can derive it. So like you define a function fx is equal to 1 plus 1 divided by 1 plus e raised to power minus x. This is your fx. Then you can calculate f dot x or derivative of fx with respect to x, and it will come as fx into 1 minus fx. These are the basic. So in this way we have calculated this like derivative of output O1 with respect to the weighted input, which is denoted as net O1. Now the third term that we want to calculate is this, the derivative of net O1 with respect to the weight W5 itself. Now this as we can see, net O1 is nothing but W5 into out H1 plus W6 out H2 plus B2 into 1. Okay, so for particular this iteration, we have already calculated like those values. This is the derivative we have calculated this derivative, and this becomes the out H1 itself. So out H1 is nothing, we have already calculated outside in the forward pass. Then we will use that out H1 here. Okay, now combining it all together, we are calculating del E, E total derivative with respect to the W5. So this is all the one step of calculating del E total with respect to W5. And this is the kind of, to make it more vectorized form, this is the kind of equation that we may use. Now, so this is the new W5 value, updated W5 value, W5 minus eta into this del E total by derivative. Okay, so eta is nothing but the learning rate that they have set it to the 0.5 value, and this is we have calculated. This was the previous weight, and this is the updated weight. Okay, 0.3589 is the updated weight. We can repeat this process in the same way for the first layer. Sorry. So in a similar manner. Okay, this is the. Yeah. So as we have calculated with for W5, in the same manner we can calculate it for W6, W7, W8. But coming more backward, then it requires a little bit of extra attention when you see it first time. So now coming to the hidden layer. So now we want to continue the backward pass for calculating the new values for W1, W2, etc. W3, W4. So now define like a derivative of E total with respect to W1. And we can define it like del E total. You may remember that picture inside your head. So here again it is given. So like so it is like this is the network and this is your W1. So W1 is going through this way, okay, and that way also it will reflect. So we this is the, from chain rule we can define it derivative of E total with respect to out of H1. This out of H1 into derivative of out of H1 with respect to this net of H1 into derivative of net of H1 with respect to W1 itself. Now to calculate each of these. Now first we calculate this first term, derivative of E total with respect to the out of H1. So this will now derivative of E total with respect to out of H1. But the output of H1 neuron is affecting the E total in the both ways. Like in this smaller network, you can see it is affecting with this path and this path. Maybe these were the W5 and W6 path. So we can say like derivative of E total like EO1 by out H1 plus this. And we are going to use the similar process. We are starting with the first derivative of EO1 with respect to the output of H1. Then we may apply the similar process to calculate this term. And you may go through it. Like again, it is nothing but the derivative of EO1 by net O1. Net O1 is nothing but the weighted input at the output neuron, and this del net O1 by del out H1. And just you have calculated these values before, and you were doing back propagation in the previous previous layer. You have calculated these, so you will use these value here for this one step hidden layer, and you will use these value. Similarly, you will calculate for other part, and you may plug those values. Okay. So these are the terms that we are getting from previous layer back propagation.
Vikansh, it might be helpful if they can try solving this once. Maybe come up with a smaller network which has calculations are simple enough, right? These calculations, okay. I mean, they're a bit more involved, right? So keep simpler weights like 1.5, something of that sort, which they can backprop and work through it. Right. So it'll help them understand how this entire thing is happening and what happens when you change the weights or how this is getting affected. Right. So maybe share that on Classroom. It's 8:55. You guys have any questions? If you have questions, we can reconvene the session for a shorter time tomorrow. You can get your questions clarified and then we can get on with the class. Does that help? In the meantime, I'll request Vikansh to share the questions on Classroom, and you can try solving some of them and then discuss those tomorrow for 10-15 minutes or during the next office hours. What do you guys propose? Okay, so Vikansh, let's give them a bit of time to go over this, okay? And maybe share the list of questions and we can discuss these during office hours then. Do you have something left or is it complete? Whatever you wanted to discuss today?
Ma'am, it is already complete.
It's already complete. Okay. Then we can discuss them. If they have any questions, they can approach you guys during office hours. Okay. All right. Thank you, Vikansh. Thank you, everyone.